and scholars, teachers and trainers, professors and professionals, you are listening from the field of science, spirituality, arts, commerce and engineering. The most honorable present Prime Minister, Fr.Dr. Narendra Modi ji, availability of respected doctors and ministers, presence of reverend fathers and mothers, affectionate sons and daughters. I, Dr. Rakesh from USA, heartily, cordially welcome all of you. I praise, admire, appreciate your presence today. It is very nice time, nice place, nice action. Listening with 100% present sense of mind, the truth of science and spirituality. Dear friends, you know that our nation is known as the nation of Father of all religions. So dear brother and sisters, we are to understand this thing that our Indian land is the creator, generator, operator of all the worldly religions. We are known by generator, operator, developer throughout the world. All over the world, it is the Indian spiritual standard that keeps its specific and special feature having unity in diversity. Whether there are so many varieties, adversities, variations, our Indian land has. But after all, we believe in equality, oneness, and unity. Why? Because of our greatness in the belief and faith of God. It's the great blessing and grace of Lord with every moment of life, with every heartbeat. We feel the presence of Lord even in all 5 elements of the human body. Above it, in the air, fire, soil, sky and water. At the top of it, light and sound. About the light, it is said that in the beginning and starting of this creation, God came first in this land in the form of light. Geographically, when we read the map of Indian location, then we find that India has the center of all type of climates, culture, language, changes. So India itself is complete, perfect, and the words, thoughts, ideas that we use to speak for appreciating our nation also presents the greatness and the highest characteristic in all the worldly literatures. All the worldly literatures that are written Basically, on Indian land, in the form of nature. Nature is our true worshipper. Whether we are the believer of idolatry, copying, imitating, and imagining, there are different methods of learning. When a child starts learning, then he learns through imitation, imagination, and copying. But the superb method of learning is imagination. Out of it, our all Indians learn, and learners, listeners become the judge of the speakers. So there are so many techniques, methods, style, standard manners that was invented and innovated by Indian land. Ultimately and initially, we believe in the love of nature. Our Indian land has created nature lovers. In the ocean, on the earth, in the sky, and in the presence of all the celestial bodies that are created on this earth, in the form of the sun, the moon, the stars, sky, that we feel in the presence of Lord. So I thank again, time and again, that unread, unspoken, unwritten, and unlearned power of God, who created himself in the form of light. He creates light in the form of lighthouse. When we feel darkness, then God become in the form of torch bearer. God has multi directions, knowledge, information, instruction, direction that are beyond to reach, indescribable. Nobody can describe, nobody can explain, and nobody can define. But it means not that we are not to count his blessings. We are to count his blessings and grace with the true heart, without any formality. Informally, when we appreciate, admire the true power of Lord with the true heart and mind, then definitely we get a lot of energy in mind and heart, and that energy helps us in doing all actions of the life. So brothers and sisters, we are to understand the concept of spirituality, which is ununderstandable. How a man can understand the ununderstandable? How a man can change the unchangeable? It is impossible. But if God helps us, provides us in all the fields of spirituality, when he guides, then we can travel on that path, because he is the true traveler of soul. He is the true partner of my soul. Thank you, God. Thank you, Lord. Zoroastrianism is a monotheistic religion which originated in Iran and survived mainly among Parsis of India and Iranian Zoroastrians settled in India. This faith is concerned about ceaseless war between the god of goddess and light, Ahura Mazda, against spirits of darkness, and teaches that each individual must earn her or his salvation through good deeds, words, and thoughts. As a result of which, Zoroastrianism are generally philanthropists. Zarathustra, also known as Zoroaster, was an Aryan priest in Nadan, Iran, who founded Zoroastrianism. He realized the futility of fighting among his people and developed a religion based on resurrection of the dead on the day of judgment, when wrongdoers will be sent to hell and the righteous rewarded by passage to heaven. Zoroastrianism is mainly practiced in Iran and India, where its followers are called Parsis. Sometime earlier to 1000 BC, early Iranians inhabited southern Russian steppes as shaman priests and herdsmen, constantly engaged in fighting with neighbors for territorial controls. Their major god was Ahura Mazda, god of wisdom, along with other deities including Varun and Indra as the gods of loyalty of and of war, respectively. According to Shias, among those inhabitants, these gods had created the world in 7 stages. First, the sky, followed by water, earth, vegetation, animals, humankind, and finally the fire. Sacrifices and prayers for propitiating their gods were their religious activities. Death was considered a phenomenon which turned unrighteous souls into shadows to proceed to a realm underground, and the religious ones to paradise. In such prevailing background arrived Zarathustra, who took to priesthood and realizing the futility of fighting among his people, propounded a vision for broader cosmic unity. Founder Prophet Zarathustra, or also called Zoroaster, founded Zoroastrianism. He lived in northeast Iran in 16th century BC or performs earlier. At the age of 30, he was inspired by several visions from the supreme god Ahura Mazda. He is believed to have been an Aryan priest who focused on the power of natural elements such as a fire, rain, sun, etc. Zoroaster's doctrines were absorbed by several religions which were to follow, such as Christianity and Islam. Zoroaster was greatly devoted devoted to the Supreme God Ahura Mazda. He was born to father Parushupo and mother Dugdovo in Takhte Suleiman in Azerbaijan, west of Iran, and as a direct descendant of Manustier, the ancient king of Iran. At the time of his birth, nature rejoiced and demons were frightened. Unlike the usual, when newborn cry, Zoroaster laughed loudly at the moment of his birth. Many angels appeared to adore him. They had come even earlier, prior to his birth, worshipping the unborn. When Zoroaster was grown up as a young boy, he demonstrated great wisdom, arguing with wise men and reprimanding idolaters and dissenters. By the age of 16, he developed this passion and was above sensual cravings. At the age of 20, he left his home and wandered into the wild, moving from place to place, living a life of austerity, practicing meditation and trance on Mounts Sebatim. He experienced communion with the Supreme God Ahura Mazda and got the gift of divine wisdom in the form of several revelations and blessed with the benefit of constant company of archangels, the divine messengers of the highest order. When Zoroaster was returning after divine enlightenment, he was attacked by the Satan, who was defeated. Zoroaster was then met by several archangels who all promised to support him. Now Zoroaster took to bring in reforms. First he tried to change the demon worshippers, Kavis and Karpans. Kavis and Karpans, but failed. They coaxed Vistas, the king of Iran, to imprison Zoroaster as he was a sorcerer. When in prison, his supreme god Ahura came to his rescue through a design. King's favorite horse got unwell and its four legs got drawn into its belly. No royal physician could cure the horse. Zoroaster proposed to the worried king that he could cure the horse subject to four conditions, which were King Vistas must embrace the new faith, later known as Zoroastrianism, agree to make his son Isfandiar the defender of the new faith. Queen Hutasa should also embrace the new faith, and the king must reveal the name of those who had plotted against him. The king agreed, and one by one the legs of the horse were restored to normal position and Zoroaster's conditions granted. But now the king also put four conditions which Zoroaster was to accept. These were: Zoroaster should reveal his final destiny and about his place in heaven to make his king's body invulnerable. Grant universal wisdom to the king, and that his soul should not leave his body until the resurrection. With the help of his supreme god Ahura Mazda and the support of the archangels, Zoroaster granted all the wishes of the king, convinced with the supernatural powers of Zoroaster. The king declared him as the prophet of Iran. Success of this new religion became the cause of two religious wars between Iran and its neighbors, where in Iran came out victorious with certain divine interventions of the prophet. Zoroaster died at the age of 77 after establishing the new faith, suppressing demon worship, witchcraft, etc., which were earlier prevailing in the society. Prophet Zoroaster is usually depicted as holding fire, a symbol of divine purity and power, and with a star-shaped halo. Teachings and beliefs. Zoroastrianism teachings represent life as a continuous struggle between good and evil. Fight between good and evil. According to Zarathustra's belief, Ahura Mazda was the god of goddess, destined to defeat Angra Mainyu, a hostile and evil spirit. While on one hand, Ahura Mazda created 6 great manifestations as Amisha Spentas or holy immortals, together with his own holy spirit as in charge of the 7 realms of the world, to take on the evil spirit. On the other hand, Angra Mainyu also created counter super being, including Indra, an unethical god. A perpetual fight between these opposing forces, where righteousness always wins, makes the world wonderful, that is achieving Fr.Dr.RKSMS as per Zoroastrians' phraseology, journey to heaven or hell after death, a concept propagated by Zarathustra, is about Shivat bridge, Chinvat bridge, narrow for the unrighteous, which a dead person's soul must cross, and from there proceed on to heaven or hell, depending upon one's deeds during lifetime. In a case where good and evil deeds balance, soul would exist in a realm of neither pain nor joy, but continue to exist till achieving Fr.Dr.RKSMS, that is till goodness overwhelms evil, after which resurrection would occur and the last judgment would shift righteousness from evil. This would be followed by a tsunami of molten metal, destroying all evil, and re-establishment of God's realm, where the righteous would enjoy perpetual bliss. Zoroaster taught that every individual is born with a free will to choose between good and evil. Based on this choice and their deeds during their lifetime, people are judged after death. Concept of God. According to Zarathustra, the supreme god is Ahura Mazda, who created life, and that forces of righteousness would one day destroy all evil. Scriptures. Zarathustra's teachings are recorded in the precious Jand Avesta or Gethas in the Avestan language, existing as relics of the Zoroastrian priestly writings. Jand Avesta, Bible of the followers of Zoroastrianism, contains the wisdom which Zarathustra received from the supreme god Ahura Mazda. These were earlier transmitted orally until 6th century AD, when these were documented in alphabets especially evolved for this purpose. Scriptures also include younger Avesta, means hymns in praise of individual divine beings, and little Avesta, short devotional prayers. While the above mentioned scriptures called the Great Avesta, compiled in 621 volumes, were in a different Iranian language, interpretations on these were later produced in Middle Persian and called Jant, meaning commentary. More notable among this literature are Bandahism, creation; Vijidahizya, selection; Dankard, act of religion, which relate to creation, doctrine of judgment, hell and heaven, as well as Zarathustra's legends. Spread of Zoroastrianism. Sometime between 1200 BC and 600 BC, when early Iranians had registered a southward shift from their earlier settlement in the southern Russian steppes, they became followers of Zarathustra, who was at that time gaining popularity as a proponent of a new religious school. First noteworthy success for his school came in the form of an Iranian king Vistas converting a Zoroastrianism. Priest of the Persians became priest for Zoroastrianism and became effective in promoting this faith in distant regions including Babylon, Egypt, Greece, etc. Zoroastrianism influenced other religions also, as can be seen from the concept of resurrection of the dead and of the world's creation in 7 stages. Interestingly, a reverse flow of influence was also witnessed, as seen from the fact that Mages introduced astrology from Babylonian into Zoroastrianism. Alexander's occupation of Iran during 334 to 326 BC gave a blow to his faith. It was only after Hellenic rule 14 BC to 224 AD and restoration of Iranian sovereignty that Zoroastrianism not only regained its primacy but its doctrines also influenced other religions. With Zoroastrianism becoming the state religion during the Iranian region of Sasanian 224 to 651 AD, Zoroastrianism reached the Arab world, where, influenced by it, Prophet Muhammad of Islam is understood to have embraced the Zoroastrian practice of 5 prayers a day after imposition of Islam as a result of Arab conquest of Iran in the 7th century AD, followed by a conquest by the Turks and Mongols. Number of Zoroastrian followers reduced to a minority by the 13th century AD. However, considerable following remained noticeable in India's western regions, to which some Zoroastrian had migrated earlier in the 10th century AD in their search of religions, in their search of religious freedom, where they had become known as Parsis. More recently, Zoroastrians have migrated to other parts of the world also, mainly America and Europe. Baha'i faith, Asia, particularly Iran, 9th century AD, 19th century AD, a universal faith founded in Iran in mid 19th century. Baha'i faith is a combination of different elements of Judaism, Christianity, Islam and Zoroastrianism. Baha'i faith emphasizes on human unity irrespective of religious affiliations. Origin: Baha'i faith is a comparatively new religious movement that began in 19th century Iran and developed as a powerful expression of the Messianic expectations in certain religious and especially in the Shia Islam. Baha'i faith was founded in 1844 AD by a Persian named Shahid Ali Muhammad Shirazi with the aim of creating a feeling of oneness of different religions. Need for such a faith arose out of the belief that while Prophet Abraham built a tribe, Moses united them, Christ infused love and devotion, and Muhammad created a nation, and each of these prophets very well did not work earmarked for them by God. There remained a collective purity of humankind as a whole, development of which was the aim of this new Baha'i faith. Initially called the Bab movement, it originated through Shahid Ali Muhammad Shirazi, who claimed himself as Bab, the traditional the intermediary between Shia Imam Mahdi and his followers. This movement later developed into the Baha'i faith, founded by Hussain Ali Nuri, popularly known as Bahullah, who claimed to be messenger of God and the promised redeemer of all religions. Bab movement was founded by Shahid Ali Shirazi, 1819 to 1850 AD, a young trader who laid claim in 1844 to be the Bab. Later he claimed to be Imam Mahdi and point of new divine revelation. Guided by him, his disciples, who were from a sect of Iranian Sikh Islam, propagated Bab's religion throughout Iran. Doctrines of the Bab's religions were heterodox, which invited wrath of the orthodox, resulting in persecution of those missionaries. Such persecutions got the babies embroidered in holy war, culminating into a battle with the fundamentalists in 1848 in the northern city of Barafurs at Shaikh Tabrishi. Although the babies did not gain much ground, They succeeded in creating a religious turmoil in their country, resulting in Bab's martyrdom in 1850 and the baby movement taking on a new form through the influence exerted by a prominent baby leader, Bahula, Bahá'u'lláh, who survived the carnage and massacres. The baby movement was revived in Baghdad some 10 years after the babe's execution. Bahala, Baha'u'lláh ultimately became the founder of the Baha'i faith, which is the focus of this chapter. But he had to face innumerable hardships, trials, and difficulties. His half brother Shubhe Azal, who was the appointed successor of Bab, caused a rift, giving rise to an Ajali minority, which later faded away and a Baha'i majority remained. Founders: the Bab 1819 to 1850 AD proclaimed in 1844 that he was forerunner to prepare the way and herald the appearance of a new spiritual figure, a new prophet who will soon come and appear before the world at the garden of Najib Pasha. Religious orthodoxy of those times did not feel comfortable with such doctrines, and the Bab was persecuted and martyred in 1850. Next 2 decades saw a decline as the Bab's followers were persecuted and killed. Baha'u'lláh 1817 to 1892 AD, meaning glory of God, whose real name was Mirza Hussain Ali Nuri, was a follower of the Bab. He was born in a prosperous family of Tehran. However, he never went to school, madrasa, but showed great inclination towards spirituality. Around those times when Baha'u'lláh was growing up, Muslims were persecuting and killing the Bab's followers since their belief about new prophets appearing in future was in contradiction to the Islamic belief that Prophet Muhammad was the last one and that no other prophet would follow. Under such prevailing environment, Baha'u'lláh was put in a death cell in Tehran because of supporting the Bab's movement. Here in the death cell, he got spiritual and mystical experiences which gave a new direction to his life. Although Baha'u'lláh was soon released, his property was confiscated, and along with his family, he started living in exile in Baghdad. As his message spread to people in Baghdad and neighboring religion, there was opposition from the fundamentalists and he had to retire to the mountains in Kurdistan, where he spent some 2 years as a dervish, wandering hermit, and mingled with the whirling Sufis. Soon after his return from the exile, his growing support became a sore for the rulers. It is not for him to pride himself who loves his own country, but rather for him who loves the whole world. The earth is but one country, and mankind its citizens. Principles of Baha'i Faith. Major principles. The oneness of mankind. Independent investigation of truth. The common foundation of all religions. The essential harmony of science and religion. Equality of man and woman. Elimination of prejudice of all kinds. Universal compulsory education and universal peace. Other principles: the adoption of a universal auxiliary language, the abolition of extreme of wealth and poverty, the institution of word tribunal for the adjudication of disputes between nations, the glorification of justice as the ruling principle in human society, the exaltation of work performed in the spirit of service to the rank of worship, religion as a bulwark for the protection of all people and nations, spiritual solution to the economic problems, and strict obedience to the government of one's country. The rulers who again sent him in exile, this time to Istanbul. In line with the earlier prophecy of the Bab, Baha'u'llah declared himself to be the prophet in front of his followers in the garden of Nazif Pasha. After some time of exile in Istanbul, he was sent to another place called Adrianople, where he became more prospective and requested wider support of several nations. Later, Baha'u'llah shifted to Akka in Israel, where he spent quite some time, which he led Baha'is to consider Israel as their holy place. Here also Baha'u'llah was imprisoned for 9 years, after which he started living in a village called Mazira. It was here that he wrote the book Kitab-e Aqdas, most holy book. Finally, he was permitted to go to Bahiji near Haifa, where he passed away in 1892 after staying there for 12 years. Although his exile was prolonged, the faith had become well established under the new name of Baha'i Faith. Great missionary efforts brought about many conversions in Iran, Egypt, India and Russia, etc. Abbas Effendi, 1844 to 1921 AD, popularly known as Abdul Baha'i, meaning servant of Baha, was son of Baha'u'llah, whom Baha'u'llah had appointed as his successor in his will. Abdul Baha expanded Baha'i faith up to USA and Europe through his extensive missionary journey during a very short period, 1911 to 1913 AD. Growth. This process of globalization of Baha'i faith was further accelerated by Abdul Baha'i's Oxford educated grandson Shoghi Effendi Rabbani, 1897 to 1957 AD, popularly addressed as Wali Amrullah, guardian of the cause of God. Shoghi Effendi Rabbani perfected the system of Elective assembly. Elective assembly is an idea initially taken by his grandfather Abdul Baha for, for admiration, for administration in the long term interest of sustaining and expanding the Baha'i faith. In addition to local and national spiritual assemblies having 9 annually elected members, a universal house of justice was established as Baha'i faith's supreme ruling body, elected every 5 years. While the Baha'is originated in Iran and presently numbering over 5 million, they have considerable population in America and Asia, with the largest single Baha'i community being in India. Expansion of Baha'i faith was achieved through a series of specially designed plans at both national and international levels and concerted efforts of over 3 decades, spearheaded by Shogai Effendi, which helped in successful diffusion of Baha'i faith worldwide. Scriptures, along with earlier writings of the Bab, writing of Baha'u'llah's and interpretations by Abdul Baha and Shogi Effendi, completions of Baha'u'llah supersede the works of the Bab. The text Kitab-e-Aqdas, Holy Book of Laws, along with Kitab-e-Iran, Hidden Words, a collection of enunciating the main aims and principles of Baha'i faith. Basic philosophy and teachings. Doctrines of Baha'i faith are a combination of different religions like Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and Zoroastrianism. Baha'i its even doctrines and beliefs. God, of Baha'i temples are open. Baha'is believe that any truth established on basis of religion cannot be ultimate truth, but has to be dependent on times. Divine agents dawns on humans and manifests in different forms. It is this difference which results in diversity, which needs to be converted to an all-pervading unity in humankind. Spiritual education which comes through prophets, if not received properly, makes humans indulge in a selfishness and wrong deeds. Ideal of Baha'i faith is the unity of people and all religions, which can be achieved through specific efforts in certain directions like world government, abolition of racial or regional prejudices, common world language, bridging gap between extremes of poverty and wealth, freedom for women, concept of God. In Baha'is faith, God is believed to be omnipotent and omniscient creator of the world. Religion of God is the single religion and revolution of this. While revelations have earlier, latest has been Baha'u'llah to be followed by others in the future. My faith is that as no ruling body, the universal house of justice of the Baha'i faith continues to provide leadership worldwide Baha'is. Effendi in 57, but of Baba's follower. Afterlife, according to the doctrine, including Arab, yearly Effendi 1800 to Baha'i for success in the process of the house affairs to release their actions comparably religious